So please lie on your back. And notice how you settle yourself this morning. Where your thoughts have been, where they might be wandering to. And is it possible for you to bring your attention toward encountering yourself? Yourself and your relationship with the floor that can give you feedback about yourself, of yourself. And one of the wonderful things about the Feldenkrais method is that it's not often that there's not a floor available. And even going to the floor for a moment, or the ground, the grass, wherever you can find a horizontal space, can help you rekindle kinesthetic memories and guide your attention to where and how you are organizing yourself in the moment. So in particular, notice firstly how your arms are lying, how your shoulder blades and shoulders are relating to the floor this morning. What sense you have of the weight of your head, the length of your spine, and its contact with the floor along its length. How your pelvis rests on the ground, and your legs. Your breathing. What sense do you have of your whole self? What image do you form? Is it lengths or lines, volumes, skeletal, or more shapes? And then please bend your knees and stand your feet. And lift and lower your pelvis. Notice how that is for you today. What distinctions can you make about how you do that? The contact of your feet with the ground, and if that changes. Either the pressure you feel on the soles of your feet, or the distribution of that pressure. Does your pelvis tilt a little as you lift it? Or roll? Or slide? And what's happening through the rest of yourself? Can you follow your breathing as you lift and lower your pelvis? Now make it smaller but faster. So it's like a tap. Lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop, lift, drop. Maybe you've seen babies playing around with this. And how high do you choose to lift your pelvis? And can you keep your breathing present in the background? Make it playful. Could you laugh while you do it? Does your pelvis make a sound? Does it lift and lower both sides equally? If it was to make a sound, what would it be? Pum pum, pum pum, hum hum hum, pum 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 pum, tap tap tap, tip tip tip, top top top. Okay, leave that. Lengthen your legs. And just notice if that's influenced how you sense your pelvis as it lies this morning, or yourself in some way. Please bend your knees again, stand your feet, and use your feet now to keeping your pelvis on the floor to create a little oscillation. So you press with your feet into the ground and follow that press as it creates a force through your skeleton in the direction of your head, through your hip joints, through your lumbar sacrum and pelvis, through into your lumbar vertebra, upward through your thoracic spine to your head. Notice how it flows. So it's now we're leaving the pelvis on your pelvis, on the ground. Pressing your feet, and you may find your pelvis rolls or rocks a little bit. And as it rocks, it may influence, depending on the shape of the arch of your lower back, it may influence the shape. So your lower back vertebra might move a little closer to the floor, but it's not about pressing them to the floor. It's about creating a movement upwards in the direction of your head through yourself. And then when you let it go, or if you pull with your feet, you rock back in the other direction. And if you've ever made jelly, and you remember testing it to see if it's set yet, because jelly never sets soon enough in my mind. Before it sets, it's got that jelly oscillatory type quality. So see if you can create that feeling of jello, so that it's not just the back of you, but the force is transmitting through the center of you, through your spine, and your back and your front, all of you are oscillating with it. Do you have a sense of your spine pushing upwards between your shoulder blades in a way that might feel as if it's lengthening your neck a little? You may feel your head rocking a little, upward and downward. Could you make it a little faster? So it's very tiny, but very fast. So I often use this movement looking at people who come to see me to see what's their ability to transmit force through their skeleton from their feet. And often you can see that sometimes it's traveling through the back of them. Sometimes there's a lot of work along the front of them. And then gradually we find ways as they learn about themselves to use this movement. Something like Lockie was saying about using breathing as a barometer. It can be a barometer to inform you what the tonus of your back is like, of yourself, whether it's equal front and back. Now, put an accent on the upward, on the headward movement. So it's a push upward and then let go, stop. So it's no longer up and down. There'll still be some coming back, but the coming back is more like a rebound. So it's up, stop, up, stop. upward stop. One movement upward, and then let it go. And notice how easily can you let it go? How spontaneously or how immediately you think it. Does it happen? Now, this time, pause from that movement, but lift your pelvis away from the floor and continue that oscillation. So you can choose how high. Maybe you want to try lifting your pelvis just a little bit and then a little bit more. So it's not about lifting your pelvis upward and downward. Your pelvis stays as much as it can the same height from the floor, and then you press with your feet, thinking about the placement of your feet. Maybe you want to explore how your feet are placed. For some, need to be a little wider, too wide, too narrow, and maybe there's a just right for now. That might not be a just right for every time, but for now, it feels better, easier, more pleasurable for you. Then please leave that. Lower your pelvis and rest a moment. Notice if you sense different things about yourself now. Please bend your knees, stand your feet. Bring your arms out to your sides at shoulder height. You may need to, you can hold hands if you want, or you can move a little bit upward or downward so that your arms form a line, one hand to the other, palms up. Lift your pelvis up, away from the floor, so that you bring the leaning place, the place of pressure, more onto your middle or upper thoracic vertebra between your shoulders, maybe a little bit more lengthening of your neck. And in this position, could you begin to move yourself in a way that you shift that pressure in a circular fashion on the floor? So it means you'll move yourself to lean a little bit more to one side, and then a little bit lower down, and then a little bit to the other side. Circle would be around the upper vertebra of your thoracic spine. But if it's uncomfortable to go to the base of your neck, the area between your shoulders, you can begin lower down. How do you breathe as you do this? Can you find a way of adapting your breathing? And what are you doing with your head? Change directions. And notice if the circle that you're drawing on the floor is uniform. For most of us, this could be an eternal study, because it requires us, one, it's a challenging position with your pelvis up in the air, but that's demanding that you connect the movement of your feet, your pelvis, your hip joints, and the length of your spine to find a way of using yourself to make the movement circular and uniform. And of course, you rest when you need to. So everybody rest now. Now, it's interesting. I think I didn't, often we don't know the ideas or beliefs we have around certain things, and we get to meet them. I have opportunities to meet them in a training program. And I realized one of my attitudes around rest was I was wasting time. And I have, my husband wrote an article, and its title was A Precious Waste of Time. And learning to sense yourself in the pauses and in ATM and giving yourself time in ATM is precious. Precious for your learning, important for your learning. And sometimes we need to meet those habits in order to become aware of them and learn to try out something differently so that we have more choice. Please bend your knees again. Bring your arms out to the side and then slide them on the floor in the direction of above your head, but somewhere where they can lie comfortably. Slide them. So it's not lifting them, slide them. You might find you want to bend your elbows a little bit so that your hands literally come closer to the region of above your head, and then lift your pelvis in this position as high as is comfortable for you to do right now. Notice the place you lean on now and begin to do circular movements around that area with your arms elongated as much as possible above your head, or out to the sides with the elbows bent. Yeah, it's fine. Lift your pelvis. And make your circles as small as you need to be able to trace both the circle shape you make on the floor and what changing part on the back of your spine is meeting that place on the floor. And change directions. Can you identify if one side of your circle is a little rounder or clearer in your sensing? And does that have anything to do with the movement of your pelvis, the support of your legs, and the movement through your spine and ribs? And bring your pelvis down and pause a moment. Please bend your knees again. Stand your feet. If my pauses aren't long enough for you, you can rest a moment longer, or you could take a rest sooner. Please lift your pelvis, use your feet, lift your pelvis into the air, and this time bring your hands forward of yourself towards the ceiling at about shoulder height. Bring your palms together and begin to make circles with your hands in space. And notice how that influences the contact point between the contact place between your back and the floor. You can interlace your fingers if you want, but keep the heels of your hands together so your palms are touching. or fingers interlaced. Your elbows are long, so your arms are straightish but not stiff straight. From the hands. But then, what can you find to use through the rest of yourself that helps create an easier, smoother, rounder circle of your hands in space? Is it possible to include in your attention the circle, the shape you're making in space, as well as what's happening on your right side, what's happening on your left side, the shifting weight underneath your feet? Your breathing. And change directions. And then lower your arms, lower your pelvis if you haven't already, lower yourself, extend your legs, and take a break. Notice if there's a part of yourself that feels relieved to have the pause, relieved to have the rest. And if you notice that, that's a great insight, because it's very likely that that part of yourself, those relationships, are working harder than they need to. And perhaps you could look for other places in yourself that could be more involved, that would distribute the work a little more equally throughout yourself. Please bend your knees again. Stand your feet. Lift your pelvis as high as you can comfortably, so you bring the leaning place onto the upper part of your chest. Bring your hands towards the ceiling. Palms together, keeping that triangle of your arms. Begin to tilt that triangle a little bit to one side and then come back to the middle. Just notice which side you chose to tilt it towards. Yes, keep going to the same side. And notice what happens through your pelvis is lifted, what happens through your shoulder girdle, your ribs, your spine. Can you feel, if you're going to the left, that your right shoulder blade, to assist you to go more easily or go further, would need to slide around your ribs on the right side? And feel how the ribs on your left side change contact with the floor. And if you're going to the other side, the same direction of your attention applies, but mirrored. How stiffly straight do you hold your arms? Could you have the intention of having this triangle, but soften your arms a little bit and see if that makes any difference to your ease in the movement of your shoulder girdle, or perhaps your sternum moving a little in space, or even beginning to move a little relative to your spine. But for that to happen, the ribs that are rolling more towards the floor need to change their shape a little bit. Okay, rest a moment. Notice after going to one side, what sort of trace does that leave through yourself? How has it impressed you, shifted you in your way of lying? Can you detect something? I don't know if Larry was the first person to coin this term, but I like it, and that's where I heard it from first, I think. May not have been. But he one of his descriptions of Feldenkrais practitioners is, and Feldenkrais learners, is that we're movement detectives. We're learning to detect movement and to go looking, listening for what's happening elsewhere, to be able to pick up clues from ourselves, from sensations of movement, as to how we're using ourselves. So if you're finding that this movement fatigues your lower back, then it's likely you're using your lumbar extensors, the vertebra in the muscles of the vertebra in your lower back, to overextend to lift your pelvis, rather than distributing that through your spine and keeping some balance between your abdominals, the flexor muscle at the front, and the extensors at the back. But long-time habits, although they can change, shift neurologically, spontaneously, and very quickly, with ourselves, it can be, some of them are very hidden, cloaked, and it's difficult to detect and can take time. A bit like doing an archaeological dig. You need to have patience, go carefully, slowly, to recognize what's there. Please bend your knees, stand your feet, bring your hands back and arms into that triangle, and begin to explore moving your hands towards the floor on the other side. So you lift your pelvis as high as you can comfortably. And then the moving of your hands in space can roll your shoulder girdle, turn your thorax. Shoulder blades can move relative to your spine. And your head, how does that respond? It's likely, because of your position, movement of your arms, that it's going to, at some point, begin to be rolled in the direction that you're going. And can you identify why you chose the other side first? Or where the sensations are that this feels a little more difficult? A little bit harder? A little bit heavier? Or you sense a little more resistance? You probably don't need pads under your head when your pelvis is raised in the air. In fact, they're going to influence the ability of your neck to lengthen and your spine to communicate the direction of movement through to your head. Okay, bring your pelvis down, bring your arms down, and pause a moment. Please leave your legs long. Bring your arms up, make a triangle again so your hands come together. You can interlace them or not. Actually play with that. So don't interlace your hands and begin to tilt your arms to the easier side for you. This time your legs are long. And notice how your back changes contact with the floor. How you begin to lean more on one side. One side lifts as you roll towards the side you're moving your hands towards. And then come back and interlace your fingers. And keep going to the same side. And notice, does that make any difference to you? Do whichever way makes it easier for you. So with our fingers interlaced, it is often linked to other actions. We feel the holding of our hands, whereas the palms may not be true for you. You can do it either way when you notice the influence of one way compared to the other. But can you gradually feel what would need to be involved? How would your ribs need to change their contact with the floor for you to move incrementally closer toward the floor? As if your hands were moving on that big vertical clock. 12 is towards the ceiling. Now some of you are going to 3, some of you are going to 9 in that direction. But is there a way of using yourself to make it easier for your hands to head down towards the floor? So your legs would need to be soft for your pelvis to be able to respond to the turning through your spine. But your legs aren't actually actively doing anything. It's not necessary that they do. Okay. Pause a moment. And then raise your arms again and begin to explore going toward the other side. And feel how you can allow your shoulder blades to participate, to move relative to your ribs. Maybe you need to invite them in. Or maybe it's already they're sliding spontaneously, engaging in mobilizing for your intention to act. How do your clavicles move? Your ribs on the left and the right. And the next time you come back through the middle, can you go towards the other side? So you're going to then come back through the middle and gradually increase your, gradually move right and left towards 3 and 9. Softening your legs, softening yourself to enable more and more of the length of your spine to participate, your head to be involved, your shoulder girdle, and listening to the movement of particularly of your sternum and chest. So for your sternum to slide relative to your spine, the ribs on the side you're moving towards need to be able to change their shape, even given the contact with the floor. So now you're moving between 3 and 9, going to the left of you and the right of you. Your legs are as soft and as long as you can allow them to be, but they're going to respond. Because if your pelvis moves and turns and changes its contact with the floor, then the coupling of your pelvis to your legs is going to be influenced. So if your legs, there's no unnecessary tension in your buttocks or your thighs, your legs will roll You might sense they're beginning to turn in the direction you're moving. Next time you come back to the middle, bring your arms down and rest a moment. Do you feel as if more of you is resting? Maybe it's less. Could be either way. It's more likely more of you is giving the weight its weight, the weight of the different parts of yourself to the ground, or resting on the ground in a slightly different way. Please bend your knees and bring your arms towards the ceiling. Lift your pelvis away from the floor after having found a comfortable place for your feet. And if you need to adjust it as you lift your pelvis, adjust your feet, then do so. Lift your pelvis up into the air, comfortable height, so you bring the leaning place higher up your back and begin to take both your arms right and left from 12 through to 1, back to 12 to 11. And see, can you gradually move a little more, 1 hour or 1 degree more through your clock in the direction of 3 and 9 with your pelvis lifted. And you may find that your head moves in an unusual way. Might need to lift. Lift and turn. May not. It depends on each person's organization. Can you breathe in a way that you don't have to think about it, but that you're not stopping? Your breathing is continuing. Okay, please bring your hands back to the center, lower your pelvis, lengthen your legs and arms and rest. Please bend your knees, stand your feet, bring your arms on keep your pelvis on the ground, bring your arms on the floor above your head, somewhere where they're comfortably long. Your elbows will be bent a little bit, so your hands are probably going to be closer together than your elbows. The distance between your hands would be closer together than your elbows. And in this position, notice the distance, if you can, between your arms and your head. And could you, leaving your arms where they are, just try that, Sue, see if that helps any. Rest your hands on the roller. No, just, it may need to be, yep, needs to be higher. Can you move your head in such a way that you bring the side of your head a little closer to one arm But do this gently, or to the other, and feel which arm does your head go closer towards? And which part of your head are you thinking of moving? So some people are turning their head. Try this one. No, palms are not together. So in actual fact, you'd probably be better like, let it go. I'm just seeing if we can put your elbow there. But then you'll touch the roller, but play with that. Some people are rolling their head and some people are turning their head. Could you try both? And how, as you're doing that, how much of your spine is following the movement of your head? Try rolling your head several times and feel where your nose or cheek moves towards your right arm and where it moves towards your left arm. Listening to whether there's a difference between the right side and the left side. And then leave your head in the middle, nose more towards the ceiling. Try sliding your head. So it's side bending. And notice if there's anything you could do with the length of your spine, your pelvis, that might assist your head to move closer, your ear or your cheek, or a little bit behind your ear, to move a little closer to your forearm. And of course, can your breathing continue? Because if you hold your breath here, some of the very muscles that you need to lengthen, that connect your shoulder blades to your neck, your ribs to your neck, will be maintaining a fixed length, and make it a little more difficult. Now think about that you wanted to touch the back of your head, or somewhere around the back, more towards the back of your head, to your right arm or your left arm. So your nose now would be turning in space. Your head might even need to turn as well. You remember we were looking in the first week at the combination of bending and turning our head to see our foot. And it's very common that we don't use the full range of possibilities of these movements, either through the vertebra of our neck or through the length of our spine. So it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle that you need to also take into account your own organization and not strain, but find out if there's something you could do in the shape of your chest, in the movement of along the length of your spine, to help you organize the possibility even of moving your head in this direction. You're thinking about the back of your head now, moving in the direction of one of your arms and then the other. And for most people, it's the upper arm. And for this, it really does require reorganization, a differentiation through your chest, your hip joints, and along the length of your spine. Try stiffening your arms for a moment. However they are, stiffen them. It's like you're trying to hold up the world with your arms, but they're still more or less in the same position. And feel the difference that makes. Can you breathe? Do you go further or less far? If you go further, it's likely that you're straining. And then let go that effort of stiffening and see if it's changed anything in your organization. Maybe it's assisted you to become aware of some place that you're holding that isn't necessary. It's one of the strategies we use to help people identify what they're doing. And Moshe says, this is not an impossible movement. It's that we have impossible spines that for a whole lifetime we haven't used well. You can have either. I think I said bend your knees, because if your legs are long, then the extra weight of the legs perhaps pulling downward in the direction of your feet would make it a little bit harder. Okay, let it go. Bring your arms down and rest a moment. I think you've had an introduction to how the organization of our head and eyes influences the tonus of the musculature of our whole self. Which is why hearing you talk about the office workers and the need to actually do something to address where they feel their difficulty is actually important, so they feel met. Please bend your right leg, stand your right foot, and bring your arms towards the ceiling. Take hold of your right wrist with your left hand and begin to guide your right hand toward the floor to the left of you, and come back. And what can you observe in the journey? Is your left hand really guiding your right? Can your left hand lead and your right hand arm be willing to follow? Is your head and neck an active participant or passively being moved, which could still be seen to be active, but it's not. You're not doing any work with your neck that is unnecessary. You can use your right leg to help, but really listen to you're initiating the movement with your left hand, and can you feel the sequential movement? Feel the flow through your right arm into your shoulder girdle, how your ribs, your sternum, your spine follows, or maybe doesn't. And when it doesn't, that's when you can give yourself a helping hand more with the right foot, or find out if your left hand is still active. What direction is the floor to the left of you? Is it in the direction of above your head? Is it a direction of a line out from your shoulders? Is it a direction down more towards the floor to the left of your left hip? Does it make a difference? And how are you holding your right wrist? So most people are holding from above with the left hand, but some people are holding underneath. So if you're holding underneath, try holding on top. If you're holding on top, try holding underneath. And can you figure out how this would be easier for someone else, the way that you weren't doing? That's on top. Underneath would be coming, yeah. Okay. Come back to the middle. Bring your arms down. Rest a moment. And bend your left leg, stand your left foot, bring your arms forward of you, your hands towards the ceiling, and take hold of your left wrist with your right hand and begin to draw it towards the floor to the right of you. So your left foot is there for you to use if you need to. How does your intention move through you, move through your skeleton? Feel what's happening with the ribs against the floor on your right side and on your left side. Do you head in the same direction on this side? Can you feel your left shoulder blade beginning to slide around your ribs? And if it doesn't, can you invite it to? And how does that movement, that changing relationship influence your contact with the floor, your direction of rolling, your ease of rolling, the movement of your head? Rest a moment. Please bend your knees, both knees, stand your feet, bring both hands towards the ceiling, put your palms together, lift your pelvis in the air, and explore moving your arms in the direction of from 12, which is the beginning place, towards 1, 11, 2, 10. And feel, how can you mobilize yourself so that you really move more and more easily to bring your hands in the direction of 3 and the direction of 9. Pelvis is lifted away from the floor and the contact between your back is more up on the... So let your weight shift on your feet. Does your pelvis need to turn in space relative to the floor? Would that make it a little easier? Or do you side bend? Pause a moment, but keep your knees bent and your arms towards the ceiling. Just lower your pelvis for a moment. Lower your pelvis, rest it on the ground. but keep your arms up. Bring your hands down towards your abdomen, keeping the triangle, keeping your palms together. Now, whether it can be, you can use your pelvis lifted or on the floor, but could you begin to sweep the triangle of your arms in a way that your hands move down towards the floor to the left of you, upwards on the floor to the left, above your head, and if possible, on the floor above your head and down to your right side and back over you again. So the idea is you're making this big sweeping circle with your arms and your whole self, feeling where does it help to move your pelvis, to lift it, to roll it. So you're moving your hands in a circle, in space, starting from wherever you like, really, but I started from your abdomen and moving your hands to the floor, to one side, using your whole self and sweeping your hands in a circle around yourself. You may touch the floor in places, or your hands may be lifted away from the floor, but as much as possible, you're keeping the triangle of your arms softly. It's a soft constraint that you can know when you lose it and change directions. Interlace your fingers and continue. Let your elbows be allowed to bend and continue. But you're still thinking floor. As much as possible, bringing your arms to the floor, to the right, to the left, above your head, but not at the expense of your own comfort. And then leave that. Bring yourself onto your back and rest a moment. With your legs long, can you bring your hands together towards the ceiling? So palms are together, your fingers touching, so not interlaced. Now stay in a very easy range and begin to move your hands a little to the right, and your triangle a little to the right, a little to the left, so that you feel the changing contact of your back with the floor, the rolling of your head, and you notice the speed you've chosen to move at. Can you keep this movement continuing, smooth, uninterrupted, and slowly slide one foot to stand? So your leg would turn outwards, your knee would begin to bend. You'd slide your foot towards your buttock, your knee out to the side, headward. And then when it gets a little more difficult, you lift your knee and bring your weight onto your foot. And then you slide it down again. The intention is, can you find a way of using yourself so the movement of your arms can continue while you add in this sliding, bending, standing of your foot. But it's the sideways arc, the arc that we moved in the other, that we explored in a previous lesson, the beginning of this week. Try it with your other leg, sliding your other leg. Keep going. And you're trying to bring one leg to stand and then lengthen that leg without interrupting the movement of your arms. Just think left and right. Don't think up and down. Yeah. One leg, the other leg. It's really easy for you. You could do both legs, or one leg, then leave that leg standing, and then draw your other leg up. Great. And leave that. Lengthen your legs. Lengthen your arms. Please bend your right leg, stand your right foot. Bring your hands towards the ceiling, palms together. And gradually take your hands to the left till you come to lie on your left side with your right foot standing. So you can help yourself with your leg. You might want to change the position of your right foot once you come to your left side. And then with your hands on the floor, your right knee is towards the ceiling. Your right foot is standing, but you can adjust where you're standing your foot to make it more comfortable. That means you might want to adjust how your left leg is lying to make an easier place for your right foot. Could you begin to slide your hands, keeping them together, upward and downward on the floor, So you may not go very far. The backs of your hands, the back of your left hand on the floor if possible. So you want to put your right leg somewhere where it's going to help you be on the side and be more comfortable. Now let your head and eyes move in the direction that your hands are moving. Yep. Palms are together and you're sliding both hands together on the floor, a little bit footward and a little bit headward, not towards yourself, footward. That's it. Yep, that's okay. But you've also got the environment not helping you. Put that underneath your arm. You're adding extra friction there. Yeah? Okay, so maybe you could change something down. I know, but let's see if changing this helps you roll a little bit more, or adjusting where your supports are. So your head and your hands are moving in the same direction. Can you feel how you have to fold to take your hands downwards? The front of you needs to shorten a little bit. The back of you needs to lengthen a little bit. So you're on your left side. You're not rolling back towards your back. You stay on your left side and your arms are long, your elbows are straight, and your mouth is smiling. Now, could you move them in opposite directions, gently, so that as your hands and arms move downwards, your head and eyes look upwards? And hands stay on the floor. Your hands move downwards, your head and your eyes are moving upwards. Notice how that movement moves through you, how you can breathe. Can you keep doing that, but let your eyes move in the direction of your hands? So your head and your hands are moving in opposite directions, but your eyes are going in the opposite direction to your head. And your right foot is standing. That's only going to create more work. Yeah, you're on your side. So maybe you change the position of their leg, maybe, yeah. So your pelvis is rolled. And you can make it as small as you like. And then back, do them all together in the same direction again. Hands, head downwards. Can you feel your back beginning to round, even in this kind of slightly, well, side lying, maybe a little bit of extension through your lower back? Okay, let it go, lie on your back. The party is starting, I think. Okay, could you please now bend your other leg, left leg, bring your hands towards the ceiling. Tilt your triangle to your right, to the floor on the right of you. Stay there and begin to move your hands a little upwards and downwards. Sensing what happens. So now the floor is a little bit of a constraint. You're being asked to move your hands downwards, let your head follow your hands, which asks a folding, a flexing through yourself, through your back. But being on your side, you may feel the floor as a constraint. That it's a little more difficult to fold your ribs on your right side. So it's an asymmetrically organized movement with the floor being a constraint on your right side. So your arms are long. It's not bending your elbows. If you bend your elbows, it's covering somewhere else that you're not moving or that you have difficulty moving. So it's like cheating. So think downwards, not just upwards. So some of you are emphasizing the upwards. Now move your head and your eyes in the opposite direction. Nice. Breathing. And then can your eyes follow your hands? So you keep the same action happening of your arms moving upwards and downwards, your head moving in the opposite direction, but your eyes are tracking your hands. They're moving the opposite direction to your head. And then move everything together. Your hands and your head downwards. Can you feel, as your hands move downwards, what happens in your lower back? through your ribs at the front, your thoracic spine at the back. And then let it go. Rest on your back. So if you feel this lesson's been a little longer, I've actually combined 2 lessons. See, disease of achievement gets teachers too. Absolutely. But notice how you're relating to the floor now. One last time, please bend your knees, stand your feet. You can choose which way of having your hands, palms together, interlaced fingers, or one hand holding your wrist, whichever you felt like you enjoyed more. And could you begin to move lift your pelvis? And again, with your pelvis lifted, begin to move your hands to the left of you, above you, around to the right, downward, so that you move your arms around and around. Several times in one direction, feeling the changing contact between your back and the floor. Elbows stay straight. Not stiff straight, softly straight. But if you know you're bending them, you can do what you want. Change directions if you haven't already. Your head can stay as much as it's able and comfortable on the floor. And if your hands are asymmetrically organized, change them and do a few circles in one direction and a few circles in the other direction. If you were doing symmetrically, you can rest if you need to, or you can play a little more if you're enjoying it. If it's pleasurable, if you're interested in enjoying yourself. And then everybody, let it go. I know that was a short length of time if you changed your hands, but you can play with it tomorrow, next week, in the weeks to come. Lie on your back. Sense yourself for a moment. How your arms lie. How your shoulders relate to the floor. Your shoulder blades. Your ribs, the length of your spine. Your breathing. How is that organizing now? Bend your knees, stand your feet. Take a moment to roll your head, just in order to find out what you sense now about the rolling of the way you roll your head, whether you feel any echo. So sometimes we think, oh no, there's nothing there. But if we change our listening or entertain the idea it's a possibility and that we don't quite know yet how to distinguish the sensations, to identify how that movement might create an echo, then often we can find it. we open that possibility. So being a detective to the sensations of movement that are happening through us. Let that go. And when you're ready, roll yourself to one side and bring yourself to sitting and up into standing. Take a moment in standing to notice if there's anything in your standing that you can appreciate. And in every ATM, you're being guided towards how you might notice those distinctions, those relationships. But each of us has our own path of learning, our own history. So what do you notice in the contact of your feet with the ground? The sense of how your pelvis is above your feet. The shape of your spine. How your head is being carried. Where your eyes are oriented. How your arms are hanging. How you sense your shoulder blades in relationship to your ribs. The sense of ease or effort, weight or lightness in different places. And when you're ready, begin to walk. And we'll take a 15-minute break.